Hello, everybody, and welcome to Expo Africa. My talk today is going to be focused on Inspire Testing's journey into AI. I'm going to start off by giving you a brief background as to who we are. The company is called Inspire Testing, and as the name suggests, we're a software quality assurance service provider. We're part of a larger group that provides other IT-related services, but our main focus is on quality assurance and doing that the right way. I've given you a brief description of some of the services that we offer, and I'd say the one that gets the most traction or the most interest is test automation. Most clients want to implement test automation in their environment in order to get that faster time to market and decrease the time it takes to go through an entire testing cycle. We also focus on exploratory testing, performance testing, and we've launched Inspire Testing's Academy, which focuses on taking non-technical individuals and upskilling them in test automation and the basics around programming. My name is Sastri Munsamy. I'm executive for technology and innovation at Inspire Testing. And what that means is that I'm tasked with keeping the company relevant in the future. So I'm constantly looking at 5 years down the line. What are the types of technologies that are in play? What are the types of skills that we'll need as an organization? Are there any tools or partnerships that we need to have in order for us to stay relevant 5 years from now? My background has been test automation. I've worked in the consulting industry pretty much my whole career, and I've been fortunate enough to work on this across the globe. One of the things I'm most passionate about, though, is not just the technical aspect, but also the strategic aspect around test automation. I want to be able to give a client an automation strategy that's fit for purpose and will help them realize the things that they're trying to realize out of implementing automation, and that's a return on investment as fast as possible. So a lot of the times a client would implement automation and not know how to do it the right way, and that's when they would engage with a company like us. We'd go in, have a look, do a bit of gap analysis, and then define how that strategy should be implemented. Okay, moving on. In order for me to show you how we can benefit from AI, I have to first explain some of the challenges that we've had in the past. So the way the QA world worked historically was there was a huge focus on manual testing. Now, what that means is that a human being would take a requirement, write a test case out of that requirement. There could be multiple test cases for a single requirement, and they would manually execute those tests. Now, the problem with this was while it worked for an initial system and something that's small, as time went on and the system got bigger, it became an issue where you would always need more manual testers and you would always need to employ more people in order to accurately test the system and go through a regression path. So the testing cycles were really long. It took a long time for software to be developed, tested, fixed, if there were any defects, retested, and then deployed into production. Due to this, manual testers couldn't run all of their tests. They had to focus on what was the highest priority test and only focus on those. So there were lesser quantity of tests that were being executed for each of those life cycles. Okay, and this wasn't scalable, as you constantly needed more people in order to test all the previous features that were developed to ensure that they were working correctly, as well as test the new feature that is being taken into production. So this was not sustainable, and then the world moved towards automation, probably just over a decade ago. Okay, so there was a huge focus on automation testing, where tests are now written in code and they're able to run overnight or repeatedly. And that just took a lot of the testing off the plates of the manual testers and allowed them to focus on just testing new features, while automation testing would then go and test everything else that was previously developed, okay, to ensure that it works correctly. Now, while automation testing resolved the issue, so testing cycles got shorter because now you could click a button and an automation script would run, and it could probably run the entire regression pack overnight, where you'd have just one night, and you'd be able to see what the quality of the deployment was the next day. It also allowed us to run more tests because now these tests are automated. We can run as many as we possibly can in that timeline after they've been automated. And they were scalable because we could run this across multiple different machines, split the testing effort across that. So that meant that we could run multiple tests concurrently and ensure that the cycle was shorter for a software release and it could be taken to market faster. But automation testing came with its own issues. So you require technical skills to be able to do automation. It's not just record and playback. You need to have some sort of development background. I'd say some of the most common tools used in the market at the moment, you either have to know Java, JavaScript, or C# in order to use that. So you need a development background, you need a development degree in order to be able to do this. The development timelines in order to create this was very long. It was time consuming. So while an automated test can run fairly fast, the time it takes to develop that can be quite time consuming depending on how complex it is. Now, this meant that it was slower for teams to get coverage on automation tests, which means that teams had to still test some of their regression testing manually, while automation would cover just the ones that have been automated. Okay, and one of the biggest issues we have with test automation is the maintenance. So when things change on the screen, when element IDs change and properties change and attributes change, or the layout of the screen changes, we typically have to go into automation scripts and cater for those changes in the code. So that would be a very time-consuming process. It means that scripters are now very expensive resources who are focusing more time on doing the maintenance of an existing script rather than creating new scripts and increasing that coverage. This is the journey that we've had in the past, and I'm going to take you through where we are currently and how we can resolve some of these issues with AI. Okay, today automation is still the focus. It's something that we feel will add a lot of value, but there's still issues that we want to address with AI, namely scripts are hard to get right. Just developing the automation test doesn't necessarily make it an accurate test. You still need to debug it, go through issues. So we treat automation projects as a mini development project. It has its own life cycle and can be time consuming. And these are the things we're trying to alleviate today. This is also very dependent on the skill of the automation tester, but typically, it can take a long time to get a full regression pack automated. You're almost playing catch up because there's new tests, there's new features being released while you're still trying to script the older features. Okay, test and result analysis is time consuming. It's a big thing. If you had 3,000 automated tests that ran overnight and you get in the morning and there's 200 that failed, we still need to go through it and have a look and see why they failed. And it could be for a number of reasons that would make it not a valid defect, such as the environment went down, or there's a script maintenance error where the script needs to be updated, or the test data is incorrect. So those are things that are very time consuming in the industry. But with AI, we can script faster. So AI can watch what we're doing as we're navigating through the application, and it can go and create the scripts for us. And all we're doing is we're clicking through, we're filling in values, and we're navigating through the app. While we're doing that, AI is basically building a model in the background, trying to understand how your application works, why do you click a certain button and what that button does. What is the expected result from clicking that button? So it's learning. We also have the ability to auto-analyze the test results using AI. So what this typically means is defect classification. It can go and have a look at what the results are. So going back to that example of having 3,000 tests that run and having 100 to 200 failures, AI can go and auto-analyze those failures and tell us, based on historic data and historic results, these are valid defects. These are related to script maintenance, and these are related to an environment issue. Okay, one of the benefits of having AI in our industry right now, and it's booming at the moment, is the fact that it's constantly learning your application. It's constantly evolving, and it can tell us even if there's something that's changed on the script, on the application from the previous time it ran that test. It stores all of that data and it uses all of that data to analyze. Okay, so now that we know what we're looking to achieve and how we can achieve it from AI, I'm going to share a tool that we've looked at in the R&D department at Inspire Testing. It's called Functionalize. And one of the cool things about Functionalize is that it has AI built in already. So we thought as an organization initially, let's see if we can implement AI, if we can create our own exploratory tester using machine learning. And after a few iterations of that, we've realized that we're not data scientists. It's very difficult for us to create a model like this from scratch. So let's have a look and see what tools are out there that already have some of these features in place. And Functionalize was one that popped up, which is very interesting. So Functionalize promotes self-healing, which sort of takes care of our maintenance to a certain extent. And I'll show you a little bit just now on how that works. But AI can self-maintain. So it can tell us that I found this field on the screen, but previously it used to be this field. Looking at the structure of the page, looking at the content that goes in here, I'm fairly confident that this is the right attributes to use for this field. So I'm going to change it and use this for my test. And you can review later to see if this was the right thing that I did. So that's sort of the power of AI in the automation tools at the moment. Other things that it can give us is Functionalize has something called a test architect. Now, remember earlier I was talking about clicking through and navigating the application and having AI go ahead and create those tests for us. If we look at the test architect, we can see that all that's happening is the test is navigating the app in the background, and as he's navigating the app, steps are being recorded, data that's being inputted like email addresses is being randomized, and this is all done automatically. So what that means is that we can now create automation tests at a fraction of the time, as opposed to taking days or hours, or sometimes even months, to create something meaningful from an automation perspective. Okay. Other things that we thought were fairly interesting in this is you don't need to have that much a technical skill in order to use it because the architect does it for you. And they have also got a nice feature where you can take simple English written text and convert those into automated tests. So AI will automatically convert that into AI tests. And I'm going to show you a little bit at the bottom now, where you just sort of write in, these are my steps. I would like to navigate to this URL. I'd like to click here and enter this text in these fields. And once you submit it, the AI will use NLP to validate what those English steps mean and translate that into an automation script. Okay, looking a little bit more into the maintenance aspect and how AI maintains. Using this tool, it can show us a before and after of the web page. So what it looked like the last time we ran versus now. It can give us the different attributes for what's changing on the system, as well as showcasing, these are the properties that I used to use in the past. But when I look now, this is the new property. It has this text. And if you'd like to use this text going forward, then just click this button. So it can do maintenance for us at a fraction of the time, which means that automation scripters don't have to focus on maintaining tests over and over again. They can focus on what they do well, which is creating new scripts and increasing the quality of the application by increasing the coverage from test automation. Another tool that is quite cool and out there that helps us is called Report Portal. Now, Report Portal is a single repository for all your test results. Now, if you look at the screen, you can see that it's not limited to just the QA part. It's actually used throughout the lifecycle of developing the software. What that means is that we can have integration into all sorts of different types of tools. So we can look at Jasmine or JBehave and look at behavior-driven tests. We can look at unit test results. We can look at user interface test results, as well as API tests. We can look at all of those things in one single repository and one single view, where Report Portal will provide us with dashboards, show us trend analysis, and so forth. So it becomes a all-in-one repository for all test results, not just from your QA team, but also from the developers and so forth. Okay, it can also do AutoAnalyse for us. So one of the things I spoke about just now was taking that time to analyze if results are false positives or are they valid defects. We could use Report Portal, click on a button, goes through all of the data that it has historically, as well as looking at the pass and the failures in the current report. And it can tell us that these are valid defects. These are the ones that we need to submit on the defect management system. And these are related to script maintenance. They should go into your backlog to be maintained and refreshed and brought up to date. These are environment issues, and the only reason this happened was because a server was down for an extended period of time. Okay, and I thought I'd throw in one more. So those that are in automation, and particularly in the open source space, would have heard of Selenium. It's by far one of the most commonly used tools now in the market, and it's used for web UI tests. It can be cross-browser, so it can run on Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, IE, any of those browsers all at once. And we thought, okay, let's have a look and see if there are any self-healing libraries that are open source that will go with Selenium to keep with the true open source theme. And we found Selenium, which is a Selenium wrapper that does self-healing with your Selenium tests. So for anybody that is using Selenium scripts at the moment, it's fairly easy to implement. Literally, you just need to wrap your Selenium driver with Selenium, and this will cater for some rudimentary maintenance that needs to happen and self-healing that needs to happen if the application changes. So there's a little demonstration on the bottom right of your screen where you'll see that, you know, it sort of looks for an element, it doesn't find the element, it goes through and compares on the DOM structure using elements that it has in the past, as well as elements that are there now. It looks at the location of the element and then decides that this is the right attributes to use and heals itself. Okay, for the Java developers out there, this is on IntelliJ. Okay, let's take a look at where we see this industry going with AI in the future. So while AI is booming at the moment, I wouldn't say it's comprehensive yet. It's still evolving. There's still a lot that it can do for us. And I think a lot of people, when you throw in the word AI, there's a lot of fear. The bots are going to take over. The bots are going to take my job. And I'm not going to be able to work anymore. I'm going to be redundant. I think that this is very far from the truth. We feel like AI will be used to assist human beings. It's not going to be there to replace them. So it will do all the heavy lifting for you in terms of creating those automated scripts, understanding how to code those scripts. You don't have to know how to do that in future because all you need to do is navigate through the application, understand what the application does, and fill in the right fields. The bot is going to do the rest of it for you. So it's going to go and have a look at what you're doing. It's going to determine, okay, this screen should be a keyword by itself. It has lots of different data permutations that I could possibly do. And if I click this button, it means that I'm successful and I'm going to go into the next page. provided I don't get any errors that have popped up. So bots are not going to be there to replace us. I think that they'll be there to assist us. It'll make us smart. It will make us be able to create smart scripts, intelligent scripts, without being data scientists or having a deep knowledge of how AI works. Other things is, you're not going to need to have programming skills in order to do this. I showed you with Functionalize, where it actually just records what you do, it populates data, it randomizes data for you, and it does it all in the background. You could be navigating the application and sort of saying, okay, I'd like you to verify that this text is appearing, that's a success text. But other than that, it does the rest of it for you. It determines what you're doing, it determines how your application works, and as it's building that model, in future, it should explore the application as well. So it will go and test other functionality that you may not have recorded because it has some sort of learning from what you've done. Humans will still be required then as well, because we still need to validate that the bots are doing what they're supposed to be doing. It was also an issue initially when automation came out, where there wasn't trust that this was actually doing what it was supposed to be doing. So we include a whole host of screenshots in automation tests. We show what fields we filled in as we go along, just to showcase that this actually tested the application correctly, and it met the result and it wasn't a false positive. So I think that bots in the future are not going to be there to replace us. They're going to help us. They're going to help us in terms of being able to have a reduced technical skill set, but still being able to perform some of the technical careers that are out there, such as test automation. I also believe that a AI bot that is monitoring what you're doing and is monitoring how your application works can also monitor the backend. And when I say backend, I'm thinking specifically around the databases that store data. So perhaps it can follow the life cycle of new data as it goes into the database. One of the things that always cause problems with automation tests, and why we never, why automation tests are sometimes not as effective, even the already scripted ones, as they should be, is because of test data management. So in order to run a test, you need test data to run that test. Now, if I have my test data stored in a spreadsheet and I have to populate that manually, so let's say we have 5 automated scripts, I need to populate the data manually for those 5 automated scripts. Sure, it could take us 15 minutes and we'll be able to execute. Now, fast forward 5 years down the line, we have a massive regression pack that we've continuously built, automated regression pack, and that now requires test data to execute. So I've moved now from my 5 automated scripts, I now have 3,000 automated scripts. And if I had to populate data manually for those 3,000 automated scripts, it will take a really long time before I actually get to execute, because I've got to manually go find data, pop them in the spreadsheet, make sure it's accurate, and do it for every single test that's in that regression pack. Using AI, nothing stops the bot from going and doing this for us automatically. It can see that data is spawned on various databases, various tables. It can see what the links are between it. It can analyze that. And perhaps in future, what it will do is it will generate data for us automatically using what it's learned in terms of behavior and links in the database. So it can go and automatically create permutations of data for us, meaning that we're never going to run out of data. We're never going to be dependent on waiting for data to be created or provided to the quality assurance team. This will do it for automatically. It will do it automatically and consume it automatically within the test. If there are processes to put the data back into its original state so that it can be repeated, then those are things as well that the AI would do, or the bot would do. It would then go and take the process that we run and sort of refresh the data to put it back into its original state, meaning that we can run this test repeatedly with the same data over and over and over again. We can also accurately reproduce a defect that we've experienced before, because we can set the system and the data back to its original state before we found the defect, run through the process as we have done using the specific data, and accurately reproduce it. Very powerful for developers because they can understand exactly how the issue is formed and how to replicate it in the dev environment. A lot of our talk has been around automated testing and how we can use AI for that. But what stops the bot from doing all testing for us? Simply by watching what we're doing on the system. So take the example of how we navigate through the system. We're clicking and the AI is building the automated tests in the background. It can analyze the network traffic as well as part of that process. It can automatically create integration tests on a web service layer or API layer. It will give us the opportunity to create multiple different types of tests. Now let's take that one step a little further. There's a capability that we have called performance testing. Now, performance testing is used to simulate user load on a system. So say it's an online shop and Black Friday is coming up. The shop provider would like to see that 1,000 or 2,000 transactions can be processed every 2 minutes on that system. And what we would do is we would then go and create a performance test that would go and inject processes or invoke processes through the API layer. So it will use web services and call multiple of those web services concurrently in order to simulate multiple users interacting with the system at the same time. And what we're trying to get back out of this is to see that, firstly, the system can still function and it doesn't break when there's so many users being used using the application. We can see that the application is actually responding in a meaningful time, so it's not hanging for a prolonged period of time. And typically, these are referred to as system SLAs. A system should respond back in a specific time. For some of the larger financial organizations here in South Africa, it's essentially a 2-second response time. The system has to respond within 2 seconds. So we run these performance tests, but that's a separate capability. You need to be a performance scripter in order to create these performance tests, which is not something that's very easy to become, and you need to have that technical skill set and the knowledge in order to create this. So I feel like using AI in future, using these bots, nothing stops them from taking those flows that it's learning from us, translating that into automation scripts, translating that into API integration scripts, and then taking those API integration scripts, combining it with automatic data creation and creating performance testing scripts automatically as well, which means that all we'll have to do is just navigate the application and the tool will do the rest for us. So this is my view of where we're going with AI in the QA industry. I think that there's going to be a lesser reliance on technical skills. I also feel like there will be an increase in the amount that we can do, the different types of tests, and maybe even inclusive security tests as well as part of that, where you don't need to be an automation tester, you don't need to be a performance tester or a security tester. You just need to have the right tools in your organization, the right technologies in play in order for all of these capabilities to be covered. So that ends my talk, and thank you very much for listening. I hope that this talk inspired you to start implementing AI in your work environment, in your organization. There are tools out there. I've shown you some open source tools as well, so there's no commercial costs and there's nothing really stopping you from getting started. You don't have to be a data scientist to do this. I'm not a data scientist. The tools that are already built out there do a lot of this for you. It's just about implementing it, understanding how it works, and riding that wave while these tools evolve into the AI that we believe it can be. Thank you very much again, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions, please feel free to meet me in the lobby. I look forward to meeting you.